All right. So welcome everyone to the Let's Talk Money session. We are so excited to have with us today Eric Smith, who is going to give you a brief introduction. Otherwise, I would get started there. Go ahead and check in your chat box, if you will, everyone. And you are going to see a link in the chat box for a handout that we will be using today and we will be going through as we are discussing today. So please feel free to take a look. There's a link to it. There's also a copy of the handout, whatever you would prefer. And for those who are tuning in, that handout is available at aub.ie/handout. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it right on over to Eric. I think you guys are in for a treat today.
All right, well, Addie, thank you so very much. And it's a privilege to get to come before your group today. And a big shout out to Mark Center, who's also on the call with Regions Bank, for making this possible. And I know that that partnership there with Auburn is very important. Very glad to be part of it and here today. So we're going to start with a little theme music. This is one of my favorite songs. That's what we're here to talk about today. Money, money, money on that next step, whatever that looks like. And by the way, if there's anything that we need to stop and talk about, if you have a question, you can raise your hand. But to be honest with you, I'm going to really rely upon that chat log to communicate with you today. And if there's any question you have, and Addie's going to help me out with bringing out some people from the audience, we're going to need some participation from you. And really, the whole purpose of this is just to have an enjoyable time, but also teach you some things that I think might be helpful when you enter that next step of your life. But just so you know a little bit about me, I'm actually coming to you live down the road. I live at Lake Martin, Alabama. It's so nice to say that. For years, I lived in Atlanta, but I'm living on Lake Martin now. And I have a company called the Financial Literacy Coach. I started it back in 2009 to teach NFL players about money. And it just kind of grew from there. And I love doing this. Been blessed to have a partnership here with Regions Bank since 2015. And I just love the fact that Regions Bank values educating students and student athletes. And it's just fun to be a part of that. My backstory was, for nearly 30 years, I was a banking executive. I was also a business manager for NFL players for a short period of time. I've actually been invited to speak, teach at 26 NFL rookie camps. The NBA has hired me twice to teach all their G League money skills. And the NCAA actually started me on this crazy thing. And I actually got a chance to speak at the NBA draft, which was kind of cool as well. Here's some people I've done work for recently at the pro level. And again, as you might expect, I might be suspect to saying something stupid. And if that is the case, don't hold that against Regions Bank. So here's the legal disclaimer that it's just me and being stupid, right? It's no bearing or reference or indication of the quality of that fine company. But anyway, so here today, we got those legalities out of the way. We're here to talk about the next step, that first real job, whatever that looks like for you. And so I just want to share some things that I think will make that transition a little bit easier. And a lot of this I created from somebody who's been a hiring manager. And there's a lot of things that I've seen previously that I thought, man, I wish that somebody had taught me some of these things. And so that's what we're going to share today. And I think it would be a good idea just to kind of see what your money IQ is before I start getting into my program. So Addie, if you don't mind helping me with this, I think what I've got is 5 true and false questions. And I'm just going to throw these out. And I think Addie's going to help me find some participants who are willing to answer the question, right? Is that correct, Addie?
I am going to call on you people randomly. So
all right, fantastic. All right, so here's the first question. A 401k is an investment product that you should only consider doing in your 30s. Is that true or is that false? Addie, what do we have as far as an answer from one of your students?
All right, there? Desiree Williams. Desiree Williams, would you like to answer that?
Desiree, is that true or false, Desiree? Desiree.
I don't think Desiree's paying attention right now.
Oh, my goodness.
About Randy Davis.
Randy Davis. Good afternoon, Randy Davis. A 401k, only do it in your 30s. What do you think? True or false?
I think it's false.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. I think it's something that we should be starting the very first paycheck if we have access to it. Here's the second one. By the way, thanks, Randy Davis, for playing along. A 401k plan. Hey, this might be a clue. We might actually be talking about 401ks today. We'll normally have options like ETFs. Those are known as exchange traded funds, similar to an index mutual fund, and things like crypto, Bitcoin. Is that true or is that false? Addie, can you give me a response?
How about Miller King?
Hey, Miller King, what do you think? Crypto and ETFs.
I will have to say no.
I think you're absolutely correct. I would say no too, because no one's allowing you to buy Bitcoin right now on those 401k retirement plans, but maybe one day. All right, so thank you very much for that one. Here's another one. Nearly 90% of all employees participate in their 401k plan. Man, that is awesome. All right, is that true or is that false? Am I just making this stuff up as I go along?
How
Addie,
about
what do we have?
Victoria Crawford?
Hey, Victoria, what do you think? 90%. That's like an A as far as grading. What do you think?
I'm going to say false. That seems high.
Yeah, it seems high to me, right? And one study that I saw, and I think it was from a Sherm Industry, was that as many as 1/3 of all first-year employees that have access to a matching 401k. Always remember, when you hear the word matching, substitute the word free money for that. All right. I read the survey, Addie, and it said that as many as 1/3 are not participating in that free match money. And that's very disturbing. All right, here's another one. This is kind of a tricky one. Only federal student loans are eligible for what's called income-based repayment plans. All right, is this true or is this false? Do we
Austin Pearson.
Austin, what do you think? True or false?
I'm gonna say false.
Oh, unfortunately, that is true, but I can see where you would say false. It is true. And what this is if you happen to have a federal student loan and you were to lose your job or you get furloughed or a pay cut, they'll actually reduce the payment or suspend your payment. All right, now, just so you know, all the conversations right now about potential debt forgiveness only apply to federal student loans and not to private student loan lenders. You might want to keep that in mind. All right, so here's another one. Half of all college students, Addie, have 4 or more credit cards. What do you think? Is this true or is this false? We got to guess.
How about Kason Stevens?
Kason, what we got? True or false? What do you think?
I'm going to go with false.
Oh, unfortunately, I'm going to have to go with true. I wish I could go with you, man, because I wish that was not a true statement. Half of all college students, 4 or more. Right now, the studies show that over 70% of all college students have a high interest rate credit card. All right. And by the way, I'm not a credit card hater. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. Right. And we're going to share some of that. But hey, I want to share just a little quick, little lighthearted video. We're all going to be, I can remember that first day on my job. I was very nervous, very anxious, didn't know what to expect. And I was worried about impressing people. But I want you to take a look at this little short video and pay attention to the guy on the left. He's a EMT, and this was his first day on the job. Now, his first day on the job was somewhat unusual in that over 15 million people were watching and evaluating his performance. And again, he's the guy on the left-hand side of the stretcher. Hopefully your day is going to be a little bit better than this guy's. Take a look at this.
Aber beim 0:0. Austria verliert 2 wichtige Punkte gegenüber Rapid und hat heute nichts zu lachen. Die Lacher hat dafür dieser Rotkreuzmann auf seiner Seite.
The guy didn't know butt sandwich was on the menu that day, but anyway, that guy was he was having a bad, tough time, and that was a preliminary World Cup soccer match, just so you know. But hey, here's the next step: the job offer. Congratulations, we're going to Auburn University, one of the greatest schools around. All right. And if I didn't have to get up, I've got my Auburn cap just out of reach, just so you know. But it's a great school. And the reality is we're all hopefully there, not only to pursue your passion, but be prepared for the next step so that you can leave that place and make an incredible impact in the rest of this world. But so congratulations, Addie. All right. That's a big deal, right? And so Addie, do you have somebody that might be willing to help me out, just teach a little bit of this information that might be able to, I don't know, figuratively just hold my hand for a few minutes?
Of course. How about Dina Green?
Dina Green sounds like a nice name. Dina Green, all right, can you hear me?
Dina, are you there? All
Dina,
right. So then, James, I'm going to go ahead and call on you since I see your face right here. James Sadie.
I see Dina Green. She's annotating on the screen.
Oh.
Okay. Who do we have? James?
I'll do it with you.
James, thank you so very much. How are you, my friend?
Great. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. All right. So we're going to just assume that I'm going to help you out getting a job. So just out of curiosity, what is your major right now, James?
Finance.
Oh, fantastic. I just need you to change just a little bit because there's a hot market right now for accounting majors. Do you mind doing a little bit of a pivot? Right. You've taken some accounting classes, right? and so, hey, the average starting salary right now is $54,000. What do you think about that? Are you okay with that?
Sounds pretty good to me.
Now, just between the two of us, James, have you ever made $54,000 in your life in 1 year?
I wish. I have not.
Okay. All right. But then my job, James, is to get you a great job offer. Right. And just out of curiosity, James, have you started the process of getting your resume in order and actually starting that job hunting process?
I have.
You have. And so have you gotten any job offers back yet?
Yes, I have for this summer.
Oh, fantastic. Well, congratulations on that. But hey, James, I got 3 hot offers for you now that you've agreed to go into accounting, right? So I'm going to be kind of like your imaginary agent. All right. I've got some job offers and I think I'm good at selling you. You do have some good analytical skills, don't you?
I like to think so. We'll find out though, I guess.
All right. Well, I don't want to overload. I don't want to deliver something I can't or promise something I can't deliver. So by the way, before we get started, just so you and everybody else knows, a really cool place to find out what salaries really are across the country in different industries is the link that's on the screen now. And that's something that that I would highly encourage everybody to take a look at, especially for those who are watching this after the event. But hey, James, here's the deal. I got a question for you. Just practically speaking, I think I can get you several job offers, but they're going to be all across the country. None of them are here in Alabama. So I got that. You're going to have to move. OK. And I got a question for you, though, James. I think I can get you 3 different job offers from 3 different companies, actually 3 different industries, but they're all going to be differing salary amounts. And so if I come to you with a low one and then a high one, how do you think that you're actually going to make the best decision on which of those jobs from a financial perspective is the one that you should, in fact, take? What do you think?
Probably comparing how many hours I'm working with the salary.
Yeah. But I hope you enjoy being an accountant because that takes a lot of time, James. And I hope you're really committed and dedicated because I have sold you like a bill of goods. All right. So now here's the deal. Offers are not always what they seem, James. All right. So let me show you the job offers I got on the table for you. I worked really hard for this, just so you know. I got this a company over there, in Augusta, Georgia, where they have the Masters. Do you play golf, James, at all?
I do. Not well, though. I'm working on it.
Well, I can't get you on that golf course. It's too exclusive, but they've got some nice pseudo private courses there, and I can get you on that. But so I've got a job offer, James, starting as a junior accountant, almost like a junior controller position. They're going to pay you $51,500. What do you think about that? You like that so far?
So far, so good.
Yeah, and just so you know, they do some off sourcing, resourcing for I think it's Duracell battery. Okay, and then there's another renewable energy company in Albany, New York. It's $55,000. What do you think about New York? Think you could enjoy living there?
Pretty busy, and there's probably higher taxes. So Augusta seems a little better right now.
Yeah, well, hey, offers are not what they appear to be. Just so you know. And this last one, James, you ever go snowboarding or snow skiing?
Only once.
Oh man, you're gonna love Burlington, Vermont. It is a winter wonderland. And James, I worked really hard. I got you 60,000 coming out of this company. Now they do something with cardboard recycling, but they're really expanding, and so they're hiring some accounting positions, and so it's 60 grand. So of those 3, what do you think you're warming up most to?
Based off salary alone, it seems like the Vermont offer seems pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty sweet place to be. Let's just see what it is. But, we got to compare cost of living, right? Because all 3 of those, man, I got you 3. If I couldn't probably pick 3 more different places to live in this country, right? And so, but I did the best I could do. I got you 3 job offers, and it's not even May 1st yet. But let's just talk about that. And just so you know, if you're looking for a source for cost of living indexes, here's one at money.cnn.com. That's pretty cool. And I'd encourage everybody to take a look at that. But James, I don't always have technology available to me. So I had to Google these cost of living indexes. And you may have heard about this before, maybe in some of your classes there at Auburn. But the cost of living index is simply a number that encapsulates how expensive it is to live in all three of these places, right? And here's the numbers for Augusta, here's Albany, and man, there's Burlington, Vermont. Can you see a drastic difference there between Augusta and Vermont? As a matter of fact, it's almost as expensive as living in Los Angeles, California, right? And so I had to take a hard look at that, James, but I'm going to go ahead and offer these up as suggestions for you. And let me just first of all explain what's in a cost of living index. Now, I did go to a website called infoplease.com to get my source, but here's the deal. Cost of living indexes, even on the CNN Money, they're encapsulating the cost of housing, transportation, groceries, healthcare, utilities. The one thing they never, most of these never do is include the cost of state income tax. Now, James, I worked really hard, but I couldn't get you a job in Texas, Tennessee, or Florida. All these states that I got, they got state income tax, and there's not a whole lot I can do about it. So I'm really sorry about that. But what I've got to do as your agent, James, I got to sit down and figure out what is your highest net salary benefit. And what I've got to do, James, is I got to divide that salary by those cost of living indexes. And then I've got to take into account the state income taxes. Now, is that making sense to you so far?
So far, so good.
Oh, I knew it would, because you're an accounting major and you got to be good with math, right? And so anyway, here are the state income taxes. Now, I went ahead with the 6%, although Georgia had a temporary decrease, but that's what we're looking at. So of those, James, what would you happen to guess is actually the highest net salary benefit of those three amazing offers that I got for you?
Probably Augusta.
Yeah, man, you must have ESPN. That's exactly what it was. It's Augusta, Georgia, right? I know it's ESP. All right, so it's $51,942. Let me show you how that stacks up against these other ones, James. Albany, New York is only $47,600, and then that Burlington, man, it's only worth $46,400. So based on a truly just a financial perspective, I'm not suggesting, James, that that's the only criteria that you're going to use, but this is what this is a money program, right? So we got to talk about the money aspect of it. But so congratulations. I think you're going to really, have you ever been to Augusta, by the way?
I have. I've been to the Masters, actually.
And you're a very lucky individual, and you're going to fit in well with all those accounting types because they all like playing golf. But, you know, James, I think it's really important that as we start the job search, that we understand the definition of what compensation actually is, and that when we get those job offers, that we understand maybe the terminology that they're going to use, because most people job offer letters are going to be 2 to 6 pages long. And sometimes there's a lot of information in there. And so I think it's really helpful, James, that, and by the way, the company in Augusta, their onboarding package, it's kind of long and verbose, but I'm going to help you through that, just so you know, so don't be intimidated by that. All right. So James, if I said, hey, what do you think the definition of compensation is? What would you guess at this point?
I would guess like benefits outside of just salary.
Yeah, hey, you took some notes in those accounting classes. That's exactly what it is, James. Salary plus benefits. Now, oftentimes people get so fixated on that salary that they lose sight of the bigger picture. And James, I do not want you to be the one doing that. So let me just remind, there's a lot of these that are pretty self-evident. Everybody knows health, dental, and life, right? And by the way, let me just always tell you this, that if you have other people dependent upon you for their living, such as dependents, kids, significant others, or whatever, a term life group policy typically is not sufficient life insurance coverage, right? I'm not selling life insurance, but I'm just saying you need to have somebody to help you evaluate that, because it's usually not enough. But everybody's going to give you group term life insurance. The place in Augusta, James, they give you 2 times salary, just so you know, okay? And so you got a little over $100,000 if something were to happen to you. But James, the thing I want to talk a lot about today in the next few minutes is these retirement plans. You know, many of you on this call, you're going to get these job offers and you're going to see all these words and letters. And unless you happen to be an accounting major like James or a finance major, some of this might be a little confusing, because it was confusing for me. And so I don't want it to be so confusing to you, so that when you see this, I want you to understand the differences. So James, you might have benefits like PTO, you know, that's paid time off, vacation days, right? James, did they teach you what an ESOP is in any of those accounting classes that you took?
I'm not sure what that is.
James, that's an employee stock ownership plan, and do not fret. That's why I am here, because I'm representing you, James. So an ESOP is when the company makes money. It's really great, but I got bad news. The company at Augusta, they don't have ESOPs. All right. So fewer and fewer companies are offering that. Just to be honest with you, they're trying to be really competitive. But that's when a company, if they're making money, they'll award their employees with free stock or a greatly reduced stock option, okay? And so that's a pretty big thing to watch out for if you get that on your job offer letter. Now, James, if you come to and work at this company and you want to go to Augusta College to get your master's or PhD, this place in Augusta will reimburse you up to $28,000 a year if you're willing to do that, right? But you got to ask. But that's what my job is, just so you know. And James, one of the reasons why I chose accounting is that one of the largest auditing firms in the world, PwC, I'm sure you're familiar with them since you're an accounting professional. They were one of the first companies to start offering the student loan repayment as a benefit. You know, and there's so many people, and I know, James, that you don't have your student loan debt, thank goodness, but a lot of the people do. And so this is a big deal for them. But once again, we don't offer that in Augusta. We just want to talk about it, okay? And so, James, the benefits can be worth more than 25% of the overall package. So we can't lose sight of this. And we got to understand this, especially as we're sitting down, having interviews and conversations with hiring managers, because I want you to understand exactly what's important to key in on as you're having these conversations. Does that make sense to you, James?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so first of all, James, let me tell you and everybody else on the call, there's primarily two types of retirement plans in our country that most people are going to be offered. Now, this is the first one, and I list it first because it's the most common one. And so, James, when you see the words and the letters and number 401k or 403b, what that's referring to is an IRS code. I know you know this because you're an accounting major, but a lot of people may not. And so it just refers to an IRS code. And what these are, James, and you already know this, is that it's a deferred contribution plan, which means that, James, if I can get you to put some money into this retirement account that goes into typically mutual funds, I'm going to contribute. So the root word is defined contribution. The root word is contribute. You contribute, I'm going to contribute. James, remember a while ago when I referenced that survey that I read that said as many as 30% of the people that have access to these defined contribution plans that are voluntary, they don't even participate. And James, this is some of the biggest money that we could potentially have access to. And I got news for you, James. For most people in our country, now you're going to make a lot of money because you're an accountant, right? But for a lot of people, the only way that they're going to be able to really ever get wealthy is a process called investing. And when we do retirement investing, it's the same thing, right? And so when you see the word defined contribution plan, it's the same thing as 401k. And you say, well, hey, how about that 403b you got on the screen? Well, that's for companies that are nonprofit or higher ed or hospitals. All right, those are typically where you see those. Okay, but it means the same thing. It's tax deferred. Now, one of the reasons why I talk about Roth IRA so much, James, do you recall from your accounting class what a Roth IRA is?
I believe it's just a retirement account that you can like basically kind of put money in without paying taxes until a later date.
James, you must have been taking some really good notes in those accounting classes because that's exactly, no wonder I was able to get you 3 job offers. That's exactly right. A Roth IRA, if you make less than $125,000, you could put up to $6,000 a year. You got to have what's called earned income, right? That's a job. Man, it goes into an account and you can have it grow tax-free. It's one of the coolest things. And I don't know how long it's going to be around, but I just want you to be aware of that. And so the other type of retirement plan is what's called a defined benefit plan. And James, you've heard of that in class. It's called a pension, right? So if you were to get a job, now again, this doesn't apply to you, but James, if you decided you want to be a public school teacher or you wanted to, maybe work for a state government there in the state of Georgia or maybe the federal government, then you're going to be eligible for what's called a pension. Ideally, you work for a company long enough, usually 20 to 30 years. And then when you get 65 or older, you get a paycheck or you get a check, about 60% normally of what your salary was. And you draw that check for the rest of your life. James, I read a poll, I think 50 years ago, over 90% of the companies in our country 50 years ago offered a pension. Now it's less than 10. Right? And part of the reason is we're all living too long, right? And or maybe the good part is we're all living much longer. And that's really the correct way of looking at that. But again, when you see the word 401k and 403b, it generally means the same. Now, James, I'm trying to slow down a little bit, but does that all make sense to you?
It does, definitely.
I tell you what, you have been an immense amount of help. I really appreciate it. I knew I picked the right person, so thank goodness that Addie knew that you were an accounting student. But and so just so you and everybody else knows, if your new employer offers a percentage match, remember that means free money. You always want to take advantage in order to get the maximum free money match. And for example, James, your company in Augusta, I've already gotten privy to what they're going to offer you. They're going to give you, for every $1 you put in, they're going to match it with $1 up to 5%. Now, if you only put in 3%, they're only going to give you 3. But James, if you put in 8%, they're going to cap their contribution at 5. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah. And so we always want to do the full 5%. And this is, I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you the value of that. Now, let me just take a little pivot for a minute, James and Addie. And you know, when I was your age, because I grew up without anybody really teaching me money skills, you know, when it came to college, I struggled. I didn't have any money saved. And just out of curiosity, if you're sitting on this call, I know we're talking about that next step, but we're all at different points in our life. And you know, maybe you got this thing down pat and you're an amazing money manager, or maybe you were like me, you're still struggling with that. But I'm just curious, if you're sitting here on this call today and you would say, hey, Eric, man, I don't have any money saved. I know I'm a student at Auburn University, but maybe I got a little bit of money saved, but I really need some help stepping up my money game. If you're in either one of those two categories, I'm just curious. I'm not going to call on you. I'm not going to embarrass anybody. Addie, don't even say anybody's name. But if that's you, just do me a favor and type the word me into the chat log. I'm just curious about the audience and where we are as far as money skills. All right. But and again, I'm not going to call on anybody. I just kind of want to get a feel, an informal survey of our group today. Do we have any me's in the chat log, Addie? I see that it's starting to light up now.
Comment on in.
Yeah, you know what? Those are my kind of people. And just so you know, that is a big time sign of leadership when you're willing to say, hey, I don't know that, or I lack that skill, right? And just so you know, most people actually lack those skills. And so, you know, if you're like me, I didn't have parents. I only had one parent. My dad left my mother when I was a young boy, and my mother didn't have the ability to teach me something she'd never been taught, right? And so maybe you grew up like I did. And so there's not a whole lot we can do about that. You know, we don't pick our parents, right? And but let me just offer a couple of suggestions. And James, just hang tight for a minute. I really appreciate your help. I got a couple of apps. The first one's Ibotta. Anybody got Ibotta on your phone right now? Look at Addie. I'll give you a high five since you raised your hand. Anybody else other than Addie got Ibotta? All right, we got some big Ibotta fans out there, huh? I'm pretty impressed. All right, let me ask another question. If you don't have any idea what I'm talking about when I use the word Ibotta, how about putting me into the chat log? James, I hope you don't put me in there. All right, I'm teasing. All right, we got some me's, right? That's how I was 5 years ago. All right, so Ibotta, Addie, you know this. It's a savings catcher, right? You download it. I mean, this is something that ought to be on everybody's phone. I mean, there's no cost, no catch. This is like free money, literally. So Ibotta, James, have you got Ibotta yet on your phone?
I unfortunately do not.
All right, well, we're going to work on that. All right, before the event's over. All right, so here's the deal. Ibotta, you download it. It has hundreds of stores on it. There's a lot of stores in Auburn that are on Ibotta, right? Because I shop at some of those, and I've gotten some money back. And how this works is you go shop, buy whatever you want to buy, and then when you're done, open up the app, take a photo of the receipt. Now, Addie, you correct me if I say anything wrong. And then what Ibotta does, they do a market survey. If anybody's selling anything cheaper that you just bought, you get cash back, and you got to take it out in $20 increments. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. If you're shopping at Walmart every day of your life, you're probably not getting much back on Ibotta, all right? Because they're pretty low price leader as it is. But for anybody else, I highly encourage you. What do you think about that, James? You think you're willing to try that?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, don't get too excited though. All right, so here's my number 2 is Rakuten. It used to be called Ebates. All right, you ought to have that on your phone. You get money back on that. I'm just trying to get money any way I can, James. All right, because I'm trying to think about maybe the person on this call who has no money saved. And that's nothing to make light up or be, make fun of. I mean, that's a big deal. And so for some of us, James, I don't know if you saw this, but I read a survey about 15 months ago that said that it's estimated that 56% of all Americans, that's about 165 million people, they don't even have $500 saved in any account whatsoever. And that's pretty disturbing to me. All right. Here's my number 3. It's a website called Studentbeans.com. All right, Addie, y'all ever you ever heard of that? And so what this is a website designed just for college students. You have access to discounts on products and services that I don't. For example, Crocs Shoe Company. I love my Crocs shoes. I was thinking about getting an upgrade, but I didn't want to pay full retail. And now that I know James, I might have to call James. Hey, James, buy me some shoes off of studentbeans.com. But that's a cool place. There's no cost to it. And I highly encourage you to take a look at it, see if it's a good fit for you. And then my number 4 is Acorns. That's a savings catcher. Some of y'all may have that on there. And before you even ask, why don't I recommend Robinhood or Stash? You probably know why I probably don't recommend one of those companies after last month's event happened with GameStop. But Honey, a browser extension. Anybody got Honey on your computer right now? If you do, type the letter H into the chat log. It's like we got some H's in there, huh? What does it look like, Addie? You see some H's? All right.
Lots of H's coming up.
Yeah, man, I'm proud of that. Hey, and here's something else ought to be on everybody's computer. There's no cost, there's no catch. And when I found out about this 2 years ago, I'm thinking, why didn't I know about this sooner? All right, because now that we're all ordering everything online, or at least most of us, all right, I'll be candid with you. Before the pandemic, I never ordered anything online. And now, Addie, Amazon Prime considers me a prime customer. I've ordered so much stuff online, right? I don't, you may not have known it, but there's a prime category only for select people in this country. But anyway, I'm teasing, there's not. But Honey is a browser extension you download, and it's the coolest thing. Anytime you get ready to shop, there's always a shopping cart, and there's this promotional code box. Prior to Honey, I never knew why that was there. I'll just be honest, I never took the time to research it. But now I know why it's there, because what they do when you're ordering anything online, James, right before you get ready to submit your payment, they will search the internet and find any promotional discount codes. And I gave this example recently. I was ordering online for my son for a Christmas present. He wanted a tailor-made golf hat. And I couldn't find it anywhere because of the pandemic. I had to go online, right? And I went to this online, pretty massive golf warehouse. And James, it was $47. And to be honest with you, I thought it was a little expensive, but you know, I love my son, so I was going to spend the money. And lo and behold, right before I click submit payment with my American Express, up in the middle of the screen pops 3 discount codes. They said, do you want to review them? Right? And those of you who have Honey, you know what I'm talking about. And it gave me a choice of either $9, $12, or $17 off. Of course, I took the $17. And because I had Honey, I saved $17. So in essence, I put $17 back in my pocket, and it didn't cost me a dime. And so I'd highly encourage everybody. What do you think, James? You think that makes sense?
Sounds great.
Yeah. So, you know, Ibotta, Rakuten, Studentbeans, Acorns, Honey. Hey, here's a cool thing. Right now on the Auburn website, Regents has got all this stuff there that tips and techniques and tools and helpful things for you to learn how to be a better saver and manage the money that's coming into your life already right now as an Auburn student. And I highly encourage you to take a look at that. You know, the last time I checked, Auburn Bank, Auburn, I think Regents Bank's the only person that's doing this, the only company's doing this. And how cool is that? They're the bank of the SEC, and the fact that they care this much about students and student athletes says a lot about the organization. All right. Hey, so James, I got to give you a success plan. Have you ever heard of an 80-10-10 lifestyle?
I have not.
Well, that's okay. I know you're a pretty sharp accounting major, but let me just share something. It might be a little different, right? They might not be teaching this in class anymore. But a lot of times, James, people will say, hey, Eric, how much do you think I should be saving in my life? And I think, James, that there's a reason why 185 million people don't even have more than $1,000. I think there's a reason why so many people are not even in the investment game, because they don't have any money left over to invest. And if we don't know how to really set goals for how we're going to manage our money, most of us never get there. And James, to be honest with you, when I was your age, I didn't have any goals. I didn't realize how important it was, but I developed this blueprint. And I firmly believe that we make things too complicated in the financial service world. And because it's so complicated and so intimidating, James, most people just ignore it and they don't do it. And that's a sad reality. So I came up with this, and I think it actually works. And I'm going to suggest this to you and everybody else on the call. Use this as a blueprint. You see, James, I'm somewhat unique in that I think you only need to save to invest 10% out of every dollar you're ever going to make. All right. I don't know what the financial planners and advisors are going to say. They're going to give you another number. Well, why don't we use something that's easy to follow? All right. We don't need to have a PhD to understand. Let me save one dime out of every dollar. Give yourself permission, James, to spend 80%. Don't stress out about it. But James, I'm going to then ask you, though, all I want you to do is be intentional with 20% of your money. That's all. And then I'm going to ask you to manage your money in such a way that we have maybe as much as 10% to invest in the lives of other people. James, I'm going to suggest to you right now that in our world, there's a shortage of kindness, right? And I'm going to encourage you and challenge you and everybody else. Just think of a practical way you can use a couple of bucks to make an impact in somebody's life. And here's the sad reality. When you are so squeezed financially that you have nothing left, you have nothing left to help other people with. And when that's the situation, two people get cheated with that. The person who receives the gift and also the giver, because there's value in giving. And James, I've learned this. I don't have an algorithm to throw up on the screen that's all fancy, but I will tell you from living over 50 years of age, the more that I give, the more that I tend to get. And you on this call, and on a dead serious note, see, I actually wanted to go to Auburn. I was a national finalist for, I don't think I've ever told you this, Addie, but I was supposed to go to Auburn. I grew up loving Auburn, and I was a national finalist. I had no money though, and so I had to get help. So I was going to be go into ROTC, and 1 week prior to the semester starting, I got a medical disqualification, so I couldn't pursue my goal of going to Auburn. And one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Auburn because of the value of the education that you get there at that school. And that's not me just saying this because I'm doing this program. All right. If you listen to my son, and I'm not joking, I got an Auburn cap right here in my office. I've wielded it many a times. But my point is that when you leave that school, you're going to have a degree that's going to afford you opportunities that a lot of these schools that I do programming for, they don't have. And that's just the sad reality of a lot of places that I teach at. But James, you and all the other people, you're going to walk out of there with a degree that's actually worth something. And you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to have the potential to make a ton of money. And I just want you to remember that, you know, hey, there's more to life just making money. We got to make a difference in the life of other people. And I'm just going to ask you to be mindful of that. I know you will. So 80-10-10. Now, let me get back to your job, James. All right, enough of that going down the tangents. All right. We got to be a 401k to be a winner. And so again, let me remind you that the job in Augusta, they got that 401k. For every dollar you put in up to $5, they're going to give you $5. All right. You still with me on that, James?
I am.
All right. Man, you're amazing. I really appreciate you. And the reason, James, I know you were taught this in your finance classes as you were an accounting major, but there's something called compounding interest, right? And Albert Einstein referred to it as the eighth wonder of the world. And you know this, James, I'm not making this stuff up. You can fact check this. He supposedly, I don't know how you measure this, but I've read this like in 4 different places. It's arguable that he was one of the 3 highest IQs ever possessed by a human being. Now, let's just go with that for a minute and assume that's the truth. Well, when I heard this as a college student, I'm thinking, James, why didn't they teach me as a high school? Because I would have been thinking, hey, what is this at Albert Einstein? He actually referred to as the most powerful force in the universe. No joke. And he talks about compounding growth of money. You say, hey, why are you talking about this? Because James, as you probably know, since you're an accounting major, the money in our stock market, it grows compounded annually. And for the last 100 years, now this is a generalization, so nobody attack me, but there's something called the S&P 500 index. It's considered the benchmark. Now, James, you know this, all right, because you're an accounting major, but it's considered the benchmark of the financial industry. And so for the last 100 years, James, you already know this, but the annual compounded growth rate of our stock market as a whole has grown between a 9 and 10% rate. Okay. And so the reality is people say, hey, Eric, there's risk in investing. There absolutely is. There's a risk that you could actually accomplish something. There's a risk that you could actually have the life that you want to have down the road. That's the risk. But I can also tell you there's a risk when you don't invest, when you don't get in the game, because I can tell you what that return is going to be, and it's not going to be very high. And so we got to get you to that next level. And that's why I just talked about savings, James. Because if you're like me and you have no money saved, you have no money to invest, right? But the cool thing is, James, these 401ks, that's my gateway to investing. And that's your gateway. So, James, I got some bad news, though. I need to give you an update. I know $51,500. You told me you've never made that much money. But I got bad news. You only bring home $3,062 a month. What do you think about that, James?
Well, wish it was a little bit higher.
Well, I know that was the best I could do. You're an accounting major. The market's gotten flooded lately, so it's the best I could do. They're willing to stick with their offer, though. And so, James, if you put in 5%, that's $153. The company's going to match that with $153. So together, we're putting in $306 into a 401k. That's a retirement plan. And inside of those 401ks are generally mutual funds, right? And these mutual funds overall are hopefully going to grow between 9 and 10% a year. So let's just assume that that happens. And James, let's just, for kicks and giggles, let's just do a little what ifs. What if you come and work for this company for 10 years from age 22 to 32? What if, James, you take advantage of a 401k match that most people on this call are going to get, if not this identical one or one very similar, James? What if all you did for 10 years, James, was just did that 5%? Take advantage of something nearly everybody's going to be offered. And James, what if you never got a pay raise for those 10 years? And James, what if at age 32, you decide to hit the road? James, how much money do you think you would have at age 65 if you never saved another single penny the rest of your life? Now, for those who might not be math majors, let me recap that. That's $306 a month, right? That's about $3,700 a year. That's about $37,000 over 10 years. That's all it was. So I'd be curious, James, hang tight with me, but I'd like to see what kind of guessers we have. You don't have to be a math major to guess. How much money would you guess that James has at age 65 by doing nothing more than taking advantage of a retirement benefit that most of us are going to get offered on this call? Do me a favor and just type in your guess into the chat log. I want to see who can get closest to this. Does that make sense, that question, James, the way I posed it?
It does.
Okay. Am I talking slow enough, James?
Definitely.
All right. Sometimes I get excited and start talking really fast, so I got to be careful about that, right? But so, Addie, what are some of the numbers that you're seeing?
So I'm seeing 500,000, 90,000, 407,000, 400,000, 650,000, 2 million.
Wow. Those are crazy numbers, right? Crazy good numbers, right? And that, what do you think about, James? What do you think? How much money do you think you're going to have?
It seems like the common consensus is $500,000.
$500,000. Hey, just being honest, are you going to be really happy if I can get you $500,000 at age 65?
Sounds pretty good to me.
Well, if you think that sounds pretty good, you're going to be really ecstatic. You'll be doing backflips because I'm going to get you $1,456,000. All right. We took $37,000. We took $306 a month. Actually, what we took, James, was just $153 out of your paycheck. We did that for 120 months, and we turned that into $1,456,000. Now, James, in this little silly illustration was the assumption that you never got a pay raise. You're an Auburn graduate. All right. You're probably going to be running the place within 5 years. All right. So you're going to be making a whole lot more money than what I just said. Hey, James, why don't we go back to that 80-10-10 blueprint that I was talking about? What if I could get you, James, not only to do that 5% and you get the matching 5, but maybe, James, I can get you, maybe go to Regions Bank and open up one of those Roth IRAs with them. And you put $153 into that Roth, and that thing grows tax-free. And that's all you ever do. All you ever do, James, is just live this 80-10-10 lifestyle. And you do your life, you take that 80%, you spend it on all your wants and needs, but you just do something every single month. And James, again, let's assume that you never get a pay raise. All right. How much money do you think you would have at age 65? How much money do you think James would have by living an 80-10-10 lifestyle, just saving 10%? This is really important to know. Somebody do me a favor and guess, what do you think James would have at age 65? Never gets a pay raise. What do we have now, Addie?
I have 10 million.
Wow, love that number.
2.3 million, 3 million, 5 million.
Those are good
5
guesses,
million.
right? How you like that, James? You're gonna be a multi-millionaire, man.
It sounds pretty good to me. You're taking some vacations for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're gonna be living a good lifestyle. Hey, that kind of money. Well, you're gonna really live a great lifestyle, because if you never got a pay raise, James, it'd be nearly $4 million. And the reality is your average wage is going to be double what you start out with. James, if I could just get you and everybody else to buy into this 80-10-10 and take advantage of a 401k match that most of you on this call are going to get, James, the reality is you'd probably have over $7.5, $8 million. Now compare that to 185 million people that don't even have $1,000. And the reality is so many of those people, James, have the opportunity, the same exact 401k match that most of you on this call are going to get. You see why starting early and starting intentional with the first paycheck makes so much sense, James? You know that, right? So congratulations. And man, you're an amazing host. So thank you very much for helping me out on that. And I really appreciate it. But y'all know who Warren Buffett is, right? He says, don't save what's left after spending. Some people mistakenly call him Warren Buffett, just so you know. All right. So don't save what's left after spending, but spend what's left after saving. So what he's talking about, Addie, he's talking about making saving our priority number one, right? So pay yourself first. Just got a quick question. All right. Two people made this quote famous. Warren Buffett was one of them. There's another guy that wrote a book. Anybody got a clue on who actually is credited with coining this phrase? It's the one book that I recommend that everybody read. It's 10 chapters. What do we have? We got some guesses in the chat log, it looks like, Addie.
Yes, we have Dave Ramsey, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
That's
Robert.
it. Who was that?
That was Christine Ball.
Christine Ball. And then I think somebody else is getting ready to say Robert Kiyosaki. Is that what you're getting ready to read?
Yes, same Christine said that as well. She's
That's the author.
and
That's the
title.
book. Do yourself a favor. Read that book. I've done multiple book clubs on that. And I'm not saying I agree with 100%, but he is so spot on some of that. And I love this. He says, pay yourself first. He says, what we do is we cheat ourselves. We don't treat ourselves. We cheat ourselves. And I'm going to show you why in just a minute. All right. So James, you know that gross is, that doesn't matter. What really matters is what we bring home. Right. And hey, I got a question. If you're on this call, and I'm not going to embarrass or call anybody out, but if you have never received a paycheck up to this point in your life where they withheld taxes, do me a favor and just type the word me into the chat log. I'm just curious if somebody's sitting here, because a lot of people would assume, hey, yeah, everybody's got a paycheck. But what I found is that's not always the case. So if you have never received a paycheck where they have withholdings, I'm not going to call your name or acknowledge you or anything. I'm just curious. Would you be willing to just type the word me into the chat log? Hey, I don't know who that is, but thank you very much. That's a sign of leadership. And I really appreciate that. So for at least that one person, Addie, I want to share this. Now, James knows this because he's an accounting major, right? But in the state of Georgia, they're going to take out federal income taxes, FICA. Does anybody know what FICA is? You can type it into the chat log. You might want to know what FICA is because you're going to learn to hate it. I promise you that. What is FICA? I bet they never quite presented it like that in classes at Auburn. But does anybody know what FICA is? If you do, type it into the chat log. What is FICA? What do we have? I see a response, Addie.
Insurance tax.
Yeah, well, basically it's Medicare and Social Security, right? And so y'all know who the baby boomers are. It's that your grandparents is born between 1946 and 1965. It's the largest group of people to ever be born in a 20-year period. Hence, it's the largest group of people to ever retire. And I got some bad news for you. The studies show that an overwhelming majority of those people have saved less than $500 in liquid assets when they start drawing. As a matter of fact, Ron Blue references this in his book, a Social Security study that was done years ago because they were so concerned about the baby boomers. Said that nearly 85% of the people that take that first Social Security check and have to have it to put food on their table will have taken that first check and have less than $250 in liquid assets. You say, why do I care? Well, you're going to care because you're the generation that gets to pay for these baby boomers that have, maybe through no fault of their own, but don't have any money. And I'm going to be honest, right now, out of every paycheck, you pay 6.2% in Social Security. Your employer, James, is also going to match that. You know this because you're an accounting major, right? So together, you're putting in 12.4% into Social Security. My prediction is it's going to be double that during your working career. And I'm going to suggest that you may very well be the first generation of Americans not to have a financial fallback plan. And I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but I'm just trying to be reality check. And that's why getting this money game thing down quickly is so important. And thank God you're at Auburn University, where a degree means something, right? And then Medicare, that's when people get 65 or older, James. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'm not 65 yet, not even close to it. But when I get to that age, I'm going to draw Medicare, and I'm going to go ahead and thank you in advance because you get to pay for it. All right. So I really appreciate that. And state of Georgia, unlike Florida, you got state income tax, right? So James, you only get $3,062. I hope you can do a lot with that. All right. So let's kind of get into this, James. I really appreciate you again, all your help. Let's talk about planning money. Now, I'm going to suggest that the number one money skill that you could ever acquire is what I'm getting ready to talk to, something that no one ever taught me. But yet, just so you know, it's a skill that every NBA and NFL team now require that their rookies possess during their rookie season. And a lot of people don't realize this. You actually have to do it and demonstrate it every time you get a paycheck. They do it because they have realized that this actually changes financial lives. You want to learn one thing about money that will impact your life more than anything else, more than any book you're going to read, this is it. And I hope every one of you do it. Now, the studies show that over 60% of all Americans will never attempt to do a spending plan a day of their life. And what that means is for most of those people, they're doomed, unfortunately, to live a life of anxiety and stress related to money. You know, when I meet people, Addie, and they say, hey, Eric, I'm not saving any money. Now, this is usually people out of college, right? And I say, well, where's your spending plan? Can I take a look at that? And 9 out of 10 times, Addie, there is no spending plan. All right. And so that's the very first skill that if I sit down with anybody, when I was a business manager for NFL players, that was the very first thing that we taught. You got to learn to control your money. That's what a spending plan is. You got to learn how to be a professional spender. And I know that most of you probably are, but I wasn't. And a lot of the people that I meet along the way, they're not either. You know, and so, the benefit of a spending plan will help you save money quicker, get out of debt faster, control your money. Now, let me go back to James. Addie, I'm not so certain that James has got the best decision-making on shopping, right? And so have you got somebody else that can help me spend James's money?
Oh, of course. How about you, Allie Taylor? Why don't we call on you since you've been your camera on?
Hey, Allie.
Hello.
How you doing, Allie Taylor? Taylor, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to spend someone else's money.
Man, I tell you what, I love doing that. You know, I'll keep my comments. My wife, she'll walk into the room and I'll be in big time trouble. But anyway, hey, so listen. So you heard James has got a job, right? Isn't that fantastic? Aren't you proud of James? You got a job in Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah, congrats, James.
Yeah, James, you can't really see him. He's uncontrollably excited right now. So, hey, this is what we got to do, Allie, because he's never, I'll be honest with you. He's been living there on campus all these years, and he doesn't really have much stuff for an apartment. Now, James has got to live. He's going to have to branch out. He's got to come to Augusta, get an apartment, right? And so we got to do a couple of things, Allie. We got to help him pick an apartment. I got 6 different apartment choices I just researched in Augusta. And so I need you to help me pick an apartment that would be appropriate for James. And then, James has been driving that old beater around campus, and it finally blew an engine. So, James, we got to get him a new car, but it's not really a brand new, because James only has $3,062 a month to work with. So I found 4 of these 2-year-old cars, and I got a car payment associated. And here's the reality. I got bad news. Don't tell anybody, Allie, but James doesn't have exactly the best credit score, right? He didn't pay some things exactly on time. And because his credit score is a little bit lower than what it should be, they're going to charge him 6% on those car loans. So there's a payment. James, I'm so sorry. We're going to work with you on that. Okay. And James is laughing. All right. So Allie, James has been living on campus. He doesn't even have a lick of furniture. He doesn't even have a TV. He doesn't even have any glasses or even hot pads, right? So I need you to help me go to a store in Augusta, and we got to buy all that stuff. All right, you down for this?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So here are the apartment choices. Man, that's a 2-bedroom, 1,020 at 1 bedroom. All right, I didn't write down the name of that company. There's a 2-bedroom there that I just put the floor plan, $1,400. He'd look good there. And there's that 1-bedroom for $750. And then that Westbury Creek 900 and Spring House. That's a pretty nice place, $850. So you got Westbury, Spring House, these 2. What do you think right off the cuff that you think James would look good in?
So if we're looking at his monthly income being about 3,000, I would say like safe to consider all the other things, maybe like a third of his income towards housing. So maybe like but not like the lowest one, because James has taste. So maybe like the 1,000 one or the $850 one on the first page, one of those.
So which one you like? How about 1,000? That's a 2-bedroom. What do you get in the other bedroom in case his family comes and visits?
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, let's do that one. Let's do that one.
You want to do the 1,020?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at that nice landscaping. That's called Bradford Point. James is going to look good there, right? Now, so we got the apartment taken care of. Now, I told you that Beaters just blew up an engine. So, Allie, we got to pick him a car. Now, these are the only 4 I could find in Augusta. That Honda Civic, those are good, dependable cars. Kia Soul, Infinity, man, that thing must hold its value. Now, these again, because again, I don't tell anybody. James is, he doesn't have a best credit score. So this is no money down financing over 4 years. That's how I came up with these payments. Which of those, what do you think? Hyundai, Infinity, Honda, or Kia? What do you think he'd look good in?
Let's go with the, go to the next slide. Let's go with the Hyundai.
Hyundai. All right. You're very kind to him. You could have really gone for the 750 and taken all of his money. Now, I told you that James hadn't, he hadn't ventured out much in this world. And so he doesn't have much stuff. We got to furnish his apartment. So we're going to go to either Walmart, Target, or Marshall's, and we're going to do one-stop shopping. Now, again, don't tell anybody, Allie. James really hadn't been saving much money at Auburn. So he doesn't have much money to put down, and his credit's not the best. So we're going to have to open up one of those in-store credit accounts, right? They're always asking people, they want to open one of those credit cards. Mm-hmm. And there's an annual percentage rate. Now, some of this I just kind of made up, just kind of guessed. But I didn't guess the monthly payment because we're going to pay it back over 12 months. So which of those stores do you think James would probably be best going to? Walmart, Target, or Marshall's?
I would say Walmart, because more likely to use that card, and usually they offer a percentage back if you have a card with them. So it probably makes sense to use the one that he's going to be spending more money at long term.
Man, I hope James appreciates the care that you're using on spending his money. He gives a big thumbs up. So, hey, here's the deal. You actually picked the cheapest one. Walmart's $225 a month. Target's $300 a month. That stuff's more expensive, and the most expensive was Marshall's, right? So $320 on that. So James, I hope you appreciate that. It's $225. And so, Allie, now that I have you, that's helping me, can you help me just finish the spending plan for James? Now, you made a comment, and you said that your decision was based on the fact that he had $3,000 to work with. I got some bad news. He really doesn't. I actually took out some of life's necessities.
Oh, no.
And one thing I didn't tell you, James is like the average college student across the country. He has a $350 a month student loan payment. Mm-hmm. So after I take out all this stuff, James only has $1,862 to work with. Okay. So can you help me? So we said, right, that, man, we don't, not 1,000, right? What do we say for a car? That was $350.
Yep.
All right. James is living large, right, in that apartment, 1,020, right? And then 225. All right. So what else you want to spend of James's money? What do you think? Now, usually in my spending plan slides, I always encourage people to have fun money. So, James is a single guy, and he's coming to Augusta. He's only been there once, all right, watching the Masters. What do you think we need to plan for some socializing, some fun money? What do you think?
Ooh, well, it doesn't look like we have a lot of money left over for that, but probably a month. I mean, like a night out, probably maybe like $100.
$100 a month. All right, so we can add that. All right, that's pretty generous. All right, so he's got $325, right? And anything else you think we need to allow for?
Ooh, I think saving, but I don't really think there's going to be a lot left for him.
Well, let's don't forget about other people. I mean, we're talking about doing good for other people. What do you think is a good amount? I mean, James is making $51,000 a year. What do you think he can afford to give away? You think $100 a month?
Yeah, I would say that's reasonable.
That's very kind of you. Okay, and $100 a month. So what do you think would be a good amount? A person that makes $51,000, what do you think? What, $300 or $400 a month?
Yeah, that sounds right, but that's not gonna be what happens.
All right, I'm just going with what you said, right? And so, what do you think about our spending plan right now? You like the way that looks?
I think he might have needed not quite as good of a house, and the rest of the stuff we picked the lowest stuff. So I think a third of the income being towards housing maybe isn't as accurate as I originally thought.
Well, you know what, Allie? So I got to come up with $133 because every spending plan's got to end in zero. So where am I going to? I mean, we signed a 1-year lease at that place. It's not like James can just hop out of that lease. He's kind of stuck there. Where am I going to take this money from?
It looks like I accidentally ruined James' nightlife, so we might have to take that $100 back. Sorry, James.
All right, and so I got to get 33 somewhere. What do you think?
I mean, well, he already has the card note, so maybe taking a little bit off giving until we get back.
Okay. Yeah, maybe $67 a month, something like that, right?
Mhm.
And then, so what do you think about that? You like that?
Yeah, considering we can't change any of the other things, I think that's reasonable.
All right. Hey, Allie, have you ever done a budget? Do you do a budget regularly in your own life?
We have our little budget book. I don't know if you can see the video.
Yeah.
But little budget book.
I could tell you got some money skills, and that must have been why Addie picked on you, because she knew that you knew how to do this. But let me ask you a question, and this is a question for everybody to reflect on. Can you think of one thing fundamentally that I actually did wrong that actually contradicted a slide that I showed you earlier?
The 10-10 or 80-10-10. We're not. Yeah.
Well, can you think of what procedurally that I did that was flawed, and I did it intentionally? I actually created the questioning in such a way that I directed your decisions in a certain way. Can you guess what I did?
Yeah, paying yourself first. Someone commented, yeah, but that too. So making sure that count.
That's exactly right, right? And what I should have asked you was, Allie, how much money should James be saving, right? Mm-hmm. And what I probably should have done was say, hey, Eric, maybe $400, $300, and then maybe based on the savings goal, we pick an apartment that James could actually afford, right? And maybe we would have gone with that $750, or better yet, maybe we get a roommate for that 2-bedroom he got, right? That's probably what we would have done. But because I started down the spending, I did it for a reason. You see, Allie, when most people in our country start doing a budget, they think they're doing wonderful things, and they are. But unfortunately, 3 to 4 months later, they've abandoned their spending plan, their budgets, because the thought process is this: whatever I don't spend, I'm going to save. Remember when I said, hey, we don't treat ourselves, we cheat ourselves? And that's what I meant by that. And so instead of taking care of the most important person in our life, what James did, he was worried about just that lifestyle, right? Getting to a new place, having a good quality life. But the reality is, I didn't leave much room for any unexpected expense, did I? And so what happens is, I got a question for you. Let's go back to that negative 133. Just candidly, do you think it's possible for James to even do that in real life?
I would say yes, because credit cards.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Hey, that's exactly right. All right. You got a bell of, that's a bell saying you hit it right on the head. So Allie, I can't thank you enough. James, does that make sense on how we need to be spending your money? Do you get a clear picture of that?
It does. Hopefully I can spend my own money in the future.
Well, if not, now that you know Allie, she is ready. She's got money game skills, just so you know. All right. So real quick, like bad debt, I want you to always remember this sound. All right. Okay. So Kaysen Stevens, I'm looking at your box. Kaysen, can you guess what that sound is? Let me play it for you again. I don't know if Kaysen's with us, Addie. We may have lost him.
I don't know. It could be. It's either laughing or it could be a little bit crying potentially.
Well, Kaysen, you got a great sense of observation. What that actually is pathetic crying, and that's what 1/2 of all Americans do around the 10th of every month. Kaysen, that's the day of the month they typically get their Visa, MasterCard bill, and they're crying because they know they can never make anything but those minimum payments, and they get trapped into that credit card cycle, right? And about 1/2 of all Americans experience that. And the last thing I want anybody on this call to do is experience that. Credit scores go between 300 and 850. All right, yours needs to start with a 700 or higher. So James, I told you we got to work on yours. All right, we got to clean up some of those medical collections that might be on there. Just so you know, the studies show about 1 out of every 4 credit reports have a serious error. You say, why are we even talking about this? Because more and more potential employees are looking at credit reports. You need to pull yours now before you even start that process. All right. Hey, James, you know what this is? We'll see if you're really good. What do you think this is, James?
Trailer house.
Well, normally that would be a good guess even for you, but unfortunately that's very incorrect. James, what in fact you're looking at is the house you get to live in when you have a 300 credit score. This is what you can live in with an 850 credit score. And just so you know, that's what's at the back of Addie's house. That's what her house looks like. So you want to be careful. I don't want to have to see you in the parking lot of Walmart. We need to have good credit normally, right? And I'm going to ask you all to please go to annualcreditreport.com. You can do it free once a week. It used to be you only get to do it once a year, but they've changed it with the pandemic. You can pull it every week. And I do mine. I pull mine all the time. You say, hey, what are you talking about? You're going to get to pull. And hey, don't tune me out. If you say, hey, Eric, I've never borrowed money, this doesn't apply to me. If you have a social security number, it applies to you. As a matter of fact, it applies more to you if you've never borrowed money before, because you're at one of the biggest risk groups on this call. And what I mean by that is if I'm an ID theft criminal and I can steal your identity, I can go create credit for you in less than 45 minutes. And so I'm going to ask you, please pull all three of those bureaus. That's Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. If you find that there's something like a credit card that does not belong to you, more than likely you've been a victim of some fraud and you're going to need some help. Reach out to me. We'll hook you up with some local Regions folks there around Auburn that would love to help you with that. But you're going to need somebody's help. I'm just being real with you because it's a very tedious process getting that cleaned up. But the sooner you do it, the better off your life's going to be. Then I encourage everybody to go to Credit Karma. They're going to tell you if you've been involved in any data breaches. If so, please sign up for their credit monitoring. It's free. I use it every day of my life. And I want you to be protected, right? So be careful. All right, identity theft, real quick, I need to be conscious of the time. But how many of you actually get a bank statement or credit card statement in snail mail still? If that is you, you raise your hand like Addie, or you can type the word me into the chat log. Addie, are you the only old school person on this call?
Probably the oldest person on this call is probably happening. I like paper and I like to be able to look it over. I'm more likely
Addie,
to do that.
So I saw another survey. I'm all into these surveys, if you haven't noticed. And I saw this survey that said that people that receive bank statements and credit card statements in the mail, I read that over 70% of them have something in common. You want to guess what that is?
Old, probably. Age is probably the biggest feature.
They throw them away and they never open them. Okay. Hey, here's the deal. If you're getting snail mail bank statements, I'd highly encourage you to consider electronic statements. Hint, hint, Addie. And it might be a little bit safer. You're all going to get phished. Just out of curiosity, if you received an email over the holidays from Amazon or Federal Express claiming that you had a misshipped package, do me a favor and type the word me into the chat log at this time. Did Amazon or Federal Express be so nice that they reached out to notify you that you had a misshipped package waiting on you? Looks like we got a bunch of me's in the chat, right? That was the most recent widespread scam involving phishing. What they're actually doing is hoping you click on that link that they texted. All right, by the way, I got a text scam last week from TransUnion saying that there was something wrong with my credit report. TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian will never text you that. All right, that happened last week. Now, for example, if somebody calls pretending to be your bank or credit card company, they should always ask this question: what are the last 4 digits of your social security number? If they don't ask that, more than likely it is a criminal. The legitimate people don't need you to tell them what your account number is. They gave it to you. They just need to confirm that you're the right person, right? 2 things you should never have on social media: your full legal name and your full date of birth, especially on Facebook. Don't make it easier, because those are 2 pieces of information I need in order to steal your identity. And by the way, if you didn't know this, I found out the hard way. You have a profile on your cell phone carrier. I was with Verizon. I had a guy from Estonia come in through my Verizon profile, which I didn't even know I had, that was set on public, and he hijacked 4 of my email accounts and locked down all my files and wanted $250 in Bitcoin to release them. And then he schooled me on how he did it. I didn't even know I had a profile on Verizon. And I bet many of you don't know you have one either. So if I would contact your cell phone carrier, look at your account online and make certain that setting is set to private. Addie, does that make sense to you? All right, real quick, like, all right, let's we'll ask Allie. Allie, you got a debit card?
I do, and I use it too often.
Do you? Oh, you're my kind of people. All right, so I got a question for you, since you should be very familiar with this questioning. So you go to the register and you pull out that overused debit card of yours that probably you can't even read the magnetic strip anymore. But so Allie, what's the first question they always ask?
Credit or debit?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you say?
Usually debit.
Oh, awesome. Who else says that's great? Who else says debit that's on the call? If you say debit, do me a favor, just type the word me into the chat log. Got a lot of me's, it looks like. All right. I want you to pay attention to me, Allie, because I'm not going to misspeak. I know exactly what I'm getting ready to say, and it's going to be different than what you've ever heard. From this point forward, never, ever, ever say the word debit again when you whip out that debit card. The question you think they're asking is the same assumption that most people make. They're asking me, do I want to pay for this with a bank debit card, or am I going to use Visa, MasterCard, American Express? Right? Isn't that what you think they're asking?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the question. What they're asking is, how do you want us to collect your money? If you say the word debit, man, good for you, because I get to use a system called ACH. It's electronic. It's immediate. I get your money before you leave my store. But Allie, if you say the word credit, darn it, that means I got to use a third-party credit card processing company to get money that's on your debit card. And I can do it. As a matter of fact, I agree to do it when I agreed to take the debit card to begin with. See, here's the deal. We're all in one of two systems, either the Visa system or the MasterCard system. And because that merchant agreed to be in that system, he agreed to take the credit. Now, the only time that there's an exception to that is when they have a posted policy like grocery stores in Georgia that will not allow me to say credit any longer. Allie, got one guess for you. Why do you think the stores want you to say debit and not credit? Because that is actually what they want.
For them. They don't have to pay the fee associated.
Yeah, absolutely. Allie, spot on. All right. So you say, hey, I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about. Well, you can fact check me. Look at your debit card, and I'll bet you anything you got either the word Visa or MasterCard logo. Here's another little secret that people don't tell you. If you slide up, Allie, you ever slide up to a gas pump, drove up and maybe get $10 worth of gas and pay at the pump with the debit card?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Here's a little secret you might want to know. In every state, the legal owner of that gas station can hold up to 2 business days, if they choose, $100 out of your account. All right. Usually the most common amount, $75, even if you only get $10 worth of gas. So if you're running low on funds and you don't want somebody to hold your funds for a couple of days because you might need them, go inside, pay the register. Here's one last thing about gas pump. Before you insert your debit or credit card in a gas pump, please look at the card slot. It typically is a aluminum brushed sprayed silver aluminum. All right. If you happen to see, here's a new generation of what's called skimming machines. And by the way, here's the deal. Let me go back. I didn't teach the rest of it. The reason why I want you to say credit, Allie, is because you never have to put your PIN number in. And here's the deal. There's a new technology that has come out. It's called contactless. All right. And I'm going to give a big shout out to Regions Bank. They have credit cards that are contactless. And you just tap the card. Well, the crooks don't have the technology to steal money on a card that you tap. But I'll be honest, I got the old fashioned kind. I got to insert or swipe mine. And if I have one of those skimming machines on the bottom side of that point of sale device that you're going to insert or swipe your debit card in, it can transmit up to 2 miles away. And the only thing I need in order to steal every penny out of your account, plus typically $500, is your PIN number. If you say credit, you're more protected. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I got all excited when Mark Center told me they have these tap cards at Regions. I mean, how cool is that? And it's there to protect you, right? So we got to be careful about that. But when you insert your card, make certain there's a piece of plastic that's not covering the card slot. It's typically gray or black. If you see that, whatever you do before you insert your card, pull on that plastic. If it moves the slightest bit, there's a good chance that's a skimmer. Do not use it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
All right. So, hey, success. Get back to James. It's not about how much money we make in James. It's about the difference that we make in the lives of other people. I stole that from Michelle Obama. All right. Mark knows I don't have many original thoughts. But hey, let me just share this with you. If you happen to have a student loan, maybe you're going to have a student loan for postgraduate, a couple of suggestions. before you leave campus, make certain that you select your repayment plan. You got to do that and review your borrowing record. Sometimes they're wrong. Whatever you do, never allow anybody, I don't care what happens to you, to ever go in default on student loan debt. There's never a reason why you ever want to do it. And there's a common scam going on right now trying to encourage people to change the mailing address, and they agree to actually help you, but you got to go in default. Never ever do that. If you have a federal student loan right now, let me reiterate this one last time, we're almost done. Make certain that you wait until we see what's going to happen with this federal student loan forgiveness before you do a refinance. Even if you can cut your interest rate in half, we need to wait and see what Congress decides to do. Because if James has got $20,000 of student loan debt and Congress decides to wipe it all out, I want him to be a part of that, right? And studentaid.gov is a place you can always go. So what next? Let's live below our means. Let's get a game plan, James, right? Set some financial goals. You know, maybe your goal is just to, I don't know, pay off a credit card or pay off student loan debt. Maybe your goal is, hey, you know, I really need somebody to sit down and help me. Because maybe you came from a family like I did. I didn't have anybody to model this. And Regions Bank, again, I'd highly encourage you to go to that link that we talked about. But there's Regions bankers in the local Auburn area that would love to sit down with you. If you need somebody, I highly encourage, I don't even get paid to say that. All right, but I know I've met so many of these people. They got big hearts. They want to help people. And that's a resource that's there for you. I hope you take advantage of it. All right, so annualcreditreport.com. One last time, please, James, before you start going and interviewing for jobs, make certain your credit report looks good. If there's an issue, contact me. Contact Addie. We'll get you hooked up with the local Regions folks. All right, we got resources there. We want to help you. So please do that. A big shout out to Regions Bank. All right, last time I checked, nobody else is doing this. And so if you're looking for a good bank home, again, I don't get paid to promote Regions. I'm just telling you, I know the organization, I know the people. They're as good as they come. I mean, if you want some help, go into Regions. And, you know, they'll be glad that they got a great team of people. But anyway, you know, hey, a big shout out to Regions. I'm going to ask one last favor. And I know you don't owe me anything, but I'm going to ask you all that's on this call, please do this. I'd love to get your input. Would you be so kind as to open up your smartphone and zoom in on this QR code? Addie, if you don't mind, could you possibly just type the URL into the chat log? Those are case-sensitive bit.ly link codes.
All
just so
there.
and the last character is a 0, not an O.
Perfect.
But,
it's in the link now, guys.
Now, here's the deal. You know, I didn't expect anybody during this public call that's in distress to raise your hand and say, hey, Eric, I messed up my life financially. But if you need some contact, you need some information, you need some help, these responses are anonymous. And I'm not going to know who you are unless you put your name and email address. If you want some help and you need somebody to reach out to you, you know, the first step is letting me know. We'll keep it confidential. But I'll get with Mark Center at Regions and we'll find somebody. If it's not something that I can help you with, we'll find somebody local that'll help you. But you got to reach out and you got to take the first step. But, you know, you guys are amazing. You got a degree that actually means something from a university that means something. And you guys are going to have amazing opportunities in life. I just want you to do something amazing. You're put here to do something amazing. And I want you to do something amazing with just a little bit of your money. Okay. And so I'm going to stop my screen share unless I need to go back. Do I need to go back at all? Okay. And so I'm going to stop the program at this time. If you would, though, that survey takes about 4 seconds. James, I'd love it if I can get your input as well. And Allie, yours as well. And I'm going to thank you in advance for doing that. But hey, we just want to provide content that you have an interest in learning about. And so we use that input. We don't just discard it. I mean, I read every single word. I take it to heart because, you know, I want to make the biggest impact I can with people I meet. And that's how I know how good of a job I'm doing. So I'll be glad to answer any questions, Addie, at this time.
All right, we have some questions that have been submitted anonymously. So first question, how do you go about opening a Roth IRA and how much should you invest? I know we covered the investment piece a little bit.
Yeah, two great questions on that. So you have a variety of choices on how you want to do that. Now, obviously, you can go to, let's just say, Regions, all right? Let's just say you bank at Regions. You go into Regions and open up an IRA. However, in order to really qualify to fund an IRA, you have to have what's called earned income. So if you're going to put $6,000 into a Roth IRA, which is a maximum you could put in if you're under age 50, then you need to have at least $6,000 worth of earned income. Okay. So if you don't have any earned income, you can't technically fund a Roth on that. You got to have earned income. Okay. And but you could easily go into a local bank if you want to do it online. There's online resources. Company I really like is Vanguard, but just a large mutual fund ETF company. But you got great people. I mean, I'm kind of old school, Addie. I kind of like, I have stuff online. I'm modern too, but I like that relationship that I have with my bankers. And so if it were me, I'd probably go into a local Regions bank and say, hey, can I talk to somebody about opening a Roth? That's probably where I would start. I hope that answers your question.
That's great. All right, here's a good one for those who might be in relationships. How should you go about combining your money with a significant other?
Man, that is one of the best questions and something I deal with all the time because I do a little bit of consulting for people in distress. And it always amazes me, but I see clearly how it's done when two people that live in the same household are not on the same page when it comes to money, right? And so if you're combining your income, if you're all eating out, we'll just say eating out of the same bucket, or we're taking money from the same source, the very first step is you got to get on the same page. Because what happens is usually, now this is just very typical from my experience consulting people, you'll have one spouse that has this awareness, right? That we got to change. We got to take control of our money. And then because the other spouse is kind of doing his or her own thing, and they have their own money, they kind of feel like they have the freedom to kind of do what they want to do. And so I think for most of us, Addie, it starts with, hey, this is our money. We, right? We're a team. This is our family unit. If whatever the significant other is, doesn't matter to me. Whatever that person, you got to get on the same page. And so, how do we do that? You just got to have a heart-to-heart conversation and say, hey, again, what are your goals? But if we're going to do this journey long-term together, then we need to be pulling in the same direction. And I don't know if that's an appropriate answer to the question, but that's just an honest answer to it.
I think that's very helpful advice and something that should be done before entering into any kind of long commitment.
Oh, I'm so glad you said it. Let me say one thing on that. All right. You might want to have everybody's credit report pulled before you decide to make a long-term commitment. Now, what I've seen a lot that produces a lot of marital, I'll just use marriage, right, as an entity. And not that everybody's going to be married, but let's just use as an example that I see a lot of personal issues come out as a result of sometimes one person handles debt much differently and more responsibly than the other one, right? And if you don't understand that and ask those questions before you commit to this long-term relationship, it can cause serious relationship issues. Okay, so.
Completely agree. All right, so how about this one? What do you think about investing in Bitcoin to hedge against rampant inflation?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so I make it a policy never to give investment advice, okay? Because investing is a very personal thing, but I can tell you that I understand fundamentally the value of cryptocurrency. Now, Robert Kiyosaki, a guy that we mentioned earlier that wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, you see him right now on Facebook. He's embracing Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation all over the place, right? And he's probably much smarter than me. Do I think that inflation is a concern? I absolutely do. But do I think that, some people would suggest that maybe I ought to hedge inflation by buying gold. All right. Maybe there's too much risk in Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's what, $58,000, right? This is my concern about Bitcoin. I'll just share this and I'll shut up. But anytime that I can manipulate a market, all right, up or down by posting something as simple as a profile, by doing something as writing the word Bitcoin on my Twitter profile, and it affects the market share price of that investment, I have doubts about how reliable is that market truly, okay? With Bitcoin, there's a finite, or crypto, there's a finite number of coins. With a company stock, you can always issue additional stock. So I don't know if I answered the question directly. I think for a lot of people though, Addie, it starts with getting educated. I think if you don't understand truly what cryptocurrency is, that's the first step. Now, I've got people in my family that swear by it. They love it. I have actually been involved in Bitcoin in the past. I do not have a position right now, but I'm not going to tell somebody else what to do with their money. I don't want to, one, give bad advice, and I don't want to create that liability.
Perfect. All right, so here's another good one. Do you have any good investment products rather than a CD that are low risk and have a fair APY?
So here's the deal. I would refer them to a local regions banker. All right, that's more qualified to answer that, because I'm not even here to push Regions products, right? I mean, they don't ask me to do that. And that's the reason why I love being affiliated with Regions Bank. There are no expectations on me. But I'm telling you, what I would do is go sit down with the local Regions banker and see what they have to offer. All right, because you might be surprised. They might have something that's perfectly suited for your risk profile. Now, when you start asking for investment, recommendations, a prudent person is going to find out what your risk profile is. How tolerant are you to risk? Investing, the old joke is investing is spelled R-I-S-K, right? I mean, but again, I can tell you what the risk is, if you will invest, and I can tell you what the risk is if you don't invest. I'm going to bank on risking my future, and I invest. And I just try to do it from an informed perspective.
Now, this part is kind of a follow-up on that, and it might be actually better for Mark to actually answer this one. And if you know, do you know if Regions will work with international students?
That's a good question. I don't know how we handle international students as far as their visas and what their classification is in the United States. However, if that person wants to reach out directly to me, I can get them connected to the right person who can answer that better than I can.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark.
Of course.
All right, next question for you, Eric. Any other long-term investment plans that you recommend aside from IRAs that people should take advantage of now at like 21 years old and going into the future?
Well, the answer is probably going to be different than what's expected. Don't forget about real estate. Okay. Just remember, there's still more millionaires made in the real estate industry than any other industry in our country. And I know that the real estate market is on fire. It's on double steroids, right? But, there's going to be an opportunity at some point to pick up and buy a property at a reasonable price. I really believe that. There's a lot of pent up, just so you know, there's a lot of people right now that probably would have had their house foreclosed upon, or they would have been forced to sell, that have been basically, they've been in a deferral state because of some of the pandemic considerations provided by the government. My prediction is when that happens is you're going to see a lot more inventory on the market. So for my own perspective, I am looking for long-term real estate investment opportunities, okay? Because real estate also produces, hey, the reason why I want you to be all wealthy is because wealth produces income streams, right? And that's really the ultimate reason why I want everybody to accomplish some measure of wealth. But for me, I always remind myself that real estate is a viable alternative. Just the key to real estate, you make money when you buy it. So you got to know when to buy it. Okay. And yeah, somebody just said passive income, right? That's really what you want. Grant Cardone, who's loud and proud on social media, he says, if you've never made money while you're sleeping, you've never made real money. And what he's talking about is passive income. At some point, all right, you don't want to have to always get up and go to work. You want to have some choices. And anyway, I was just, Allie put something comment about international students in the chat, but that would be my response to that is don't rule that out.
All right, so 2 more questions. One of them is a little bit briefer. So I have 1 more semester of college left and have enough money in my checking account to pay tuition outright if I need to. However, would you recommend that I take out a loan in the hopes that the loan forgiveness happens? Or would you recommend me just paying tuition out of pocket?
Okay, so the easy response would be no, don't take out a loan. Okay, but I'll just gonna give you my honest answer to that question. If I was assured that you could get federal student loan, when you're doing the FAFSA, and that is what you're going to be able to get is a federal loan. More and more people that I run into, Addie, are being kicked to the private student loan market in order to get that bridge, right? I don't know if you're seeing that as well, but what I'm seeing is a lot of students are forced, and more importantly, the parents are being forced, because a lot of students are still claimed as a dependent on their parents' tax return, right? So when it comes to a need-based, they're disqualified because the income's too high. And in many cases, they're being forced to get a private. Well, if I knew that they're going to force you to take out a private student loan and you really don't need the money, heck no, don't do it. But if I knew that you were guaranteed of getting a federal loan, and I knew that you were responsible, that you might just take that money and park it and not spend it, because if you had the discipline, then maybe it's something you might want to consider. Okay. But anyway, that's my answer to that.
All right. And last question. When a company is employee owned, what does that equate to in terms of financial benefits as an employee of that organization?
So that is an employee benefit question specifically to that situation. And I don't have a clear-cut answer. It depends. And there's no way to, give a clear answer on that because I'm not an employee benefit expert. I can tell you that, I have worked for organizations that were basically employee owned. And I've also worked for companies that were privately owned and publicly owned. And so every situation, it also depends on what state, and also what the current legislation is that governs that. So I would say you really need to get with employee benefit person. I don't have a quick answer for that. I could certainly research that, but that would be my response to that.
Right. And that was the last question.
All right. Well, fantastic.
We want to thank our amazing presenter today, Eric Smith, for giving us all of his great advice and wisdom. Please be sure to take a look at the handout that we posted, because there's all of those great links in there. Many of the links are also in the chat. We will be posting the recording of this on our page. And so I will be following up with an email to everyone just to give a quick response in a survey, and I'll include a link to the actual presentation if anybody wants to review it again. All right.
Fantastic. Hey, again, let me just say a big shout out to Mark Center. It wouldn't be possible without him. And so thank you, Mark and Regions Bank. And I'm proud to be a part of this. So thank you, Addie. I enjoyed very much. Thank you all for showing up. You're an amazing group of students. And I wish you all the best.
And I would like to also thank Regions and Mark Center and also Julie Huff for helping organize this event.
Absolutely.
I am Addie Buckley-Burnell with the University Career Center, and we want to thank you all for your time. Have a great rest of your day, guys.
Y'all take care. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.